Welcome, Rossana, to
Thank you.
Hablamos Spanglish.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
So, one of our missions of Hablamos Spanglish is to, inspire other Latinos and Hispanos here in the U.S. through our journey, our story. And, just like I was mentioning before we started recording, I know, you have such a inspiring story, and I have seen you also, we know each other through our, professional careers and things like that, but I have get to know you as a person. I know you, your story can inspire many others as a Hispanic American. And, I wanted you to please share your story with our listeners.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where to start?
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really exciting, and just getting to know you over the past year or so now, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more, but you're just wonderful in the community, and I'm excited for this for you too. So thank you for having me. I just start from the beginning.
Yes.
I guess.
Like your background, your journey here in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. So my family's from Peru, but I grew up in Broward County down in South Florida. So, but surrounded by, my Peruvian family with all of those roots. So I was able to really fully encompass feeling that, I was part of the Hispanic community from a very early age. But I am half and half, so half American and half Peruvian. But again, just fully immersed in that culture from the very beginning. So I've always said, if anybody asks me, I'm like, I'm Peruvian. I just keep it simple. But yeah, so really growing up down in South Florida, always being surrounded by family, making sure I was bringing up all those values of, all of the anything from the traditions with holidays and all of those things. And then moved up to Orlando to go to UCF. Okay. So I was the first one, charge on, as the first one in my family to attend and graduate from college. So, which was exciting. So first generation, that was a big thing for me to bring in to, not only my family, but for myself and for my future family. So excited about that. And yeah, UCF was the start of it all. I figured out what I wanted to do. I was a psychology major, and for what reason, I really don't know. But I just liked a class, I think, in high school. I'm like,
it was interesting. I did my minor in psychology.
Yeah.
So,
there you go. And then at some point I picked up a minor in criminal justice.
Okay.
I don't know why, again. I think it was just an interest point. But I found all my time I was spending in nonprofits, so in fundraising and volunteering. I was doing a lot with the Children's Miracle Network, and all of that it just reminded me of all the values that I learned growing up. So really got into nonprofit work, and then started working for the UCF Foundation. And so started doing things like student giving and new ways to just do fundraising, things that I didn't even know were possible. So when I moved over to United Way after I graduated with my master's in nonprofit management and public administration, and started at United Way and been there ever since.
And that's how we met.
And that's how we met. And that's how we're here today.
Exactly. So going back a little bit to, to your story, and I can see, because my brother, he was born here in the U.S., right? But, and his, my dad is from Venezuela, but his mom is American. So he kind of, had the two cultures, and, he, eats arepas, and he loves arepas, and all the Venezuelan.
Who doesn't love arepas?
Right.
I'm just saying.
But also, he's very American, and it's funny because I see how he has been able to, kind of acculturate to both, right?
Yeah.
Because we speak Spanish at home, but then we transition to English when he's, with us, and it's funny.
Yeah.
So how was, growing up with those two cultures? And
it's a good question. Yeah. And I feel like, too, because of my last name, being American, that people would kind of I don't know, in the Hispanic community underestimate me, and then another way around too. So it was like, okay, which one? It's a little bit of a struggle, which one am I today? And it took me some time to pick. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm both. Okay. And how do I merge those things together? So, with some friends who were more in that Hispanic culture, I felt a little bit more at home, and then at school and, speaking English and all of those things, not being at home or with those friends and close family members, it was like I had another personality. It's like, which one? Aww. Which one am I? I need to pick one. And so kind of merging those together didn't happen until, later in high school and then going into college. So being able to merge those things together and figure those out was very interesting. But yeah, at home, with my mom, I'm always speaking Spanish. It was just my mom and I growing up. So got very close, of course. She's my best friend. And completely speak Spanish with her. It's like I can turn it on and off, which is funny. But yeah, so sometimes I find that, it's funny in speaking English with someone and they know my last name. They're sometimes surprised by, wait a minute, what? Yeah. You're Hispanic? You speak Spanish? I would never have known that. So, and then other times, the folks will take it the other way. And so I still see a little bit of those two different personalities, and one person might see me in this way or this way, but I'm really still working on bringing those two things together.
It's completely different, and I learned that, while doing, these interviews, but also and having, different conversations with different, generations of Hispanics, or we have some that just got here, some that were born here from Hispanic parents, or we have third generation. So it's different. They all have a different story. So, and I know, for those who have Hispanic parents but they were born here, they say the same thing. It's like I didn't know. I felt like I was in a limbo, right?
Yeah, literally.
So, and sometimes you weren't American enough or Hispanic enough.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Did you feel like that?
Yeah. Yes, but I get more of if I'm not, because of my last name, sometimes it's like, I'm not Hispanic enough, and I struggle with that a little bit. And so that's kind of what I mean by I've taken that time to see how I merge my two personalities together, is because that's been important for me to say, it doesn't matter what, anything from, if I'm not tan enough, I don't have, any of that. That's not what it is. It's about how I feel and how I interact with my community, with work, and be a representation of the Hispanic community. That's for me to decide, not for anyone else to decide. So it took me a little bit of time to get there. But I definitely have felt that, especially growing up. It's always difficult. Especially in South Florida, where it's a huge Hispanic population. And so it was difficult to say, if you were in school that you weren't allowed to, you need to speak English here. We don't speak Spanish here. Versus, some others that only spoke Spanish and they were put into those, the classes.
The
ESOL programs. The programs and all
I went
of that.
through that.
and they weren't American enough. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I resonate and relate to both of them. So it took me a little bit of time, like I said, but it's not about what category people want to put you in, So you can be both.
That's true. It is. It's like I came here when I was 15, but it was a struggle at the beginning because I didn't want to learn English. I didn't want to, my friends were all Hispanics, and I also came in during a hard time because my mom had just passed away in Venezuela. So, it was that process, that internal process took me a little longer, right? And then for me, just when, it started, like going to college and everything was in English. So that transition, point was for me kind of like seeing that I needed to make a switch. You have to embrace that this is my community, this is where I am, and it's everybody goes through different challenges, and so I wanted to ask you, like you were born here, you didn't have that, learning curve of, the language, for example.
I feel blessed to be in that I do, because every time I hear about, oh my goodness, even with my mom, other family members.
And that's my question is like with your mom, for example, did you, I know like, and I listen to other podcasts where, you know, other Latinas, I see my friends how they become like their moms or their parents translator. They go to the, you know, to the hospital with them, to the school, you know.
Oh my gosh.
In order to be able to translate for them, right? So did you go through something like that?
Okay. A little bit. I think I was very privileged in a sense that my mom came from Peru at 19.
Okay.
So she was thrown in and full culture shock. She lived in Queens, New York, and just, I couldn't talk about a culture shock. Just completely different. But hearing her experience too, I mean, it took her a long time, but she got to a point where she became very well spoken in English, and in her work environment she got connected to the medical field, and so she's just been there ever since. So I was lucky in that sense that and that's really where I learned it from. She's the most independent person I've ever met, so she doesn't need that, you know. She never needed me to do any of that, but that, if anything, inspired me to be that way as well. So something that I know a lot of folks, they have to experience is having to help their parents, but she never needed any of that support. And so she always taught me to be that way too. So I'm like, okay, she's got it all together. She doesn't need me. I need to make sure. But of course, there's still some situations, I think just generationally too, in learning and stuff like that. But you know, apps and things that
those everybody
all of that. So a little bit of that, but you know, she's just always been, like I said, so independent that was inspirational for me.
And that's really inspiring, and that's the whole purpose, you know, with this, because we might have you know, young listeners listening to this podcast, and you know that it's okay when we migrate, you know, we are gonna go through a different situation. And I always see, you know, these quotes on social media that, you know, don't think that you are behind, you know. Everybody is at the place they need to be at the right time. So it might take us a little longer, but that's fine. You know, we're experiencing a completely different story, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then with regards to, you know, the Peruvian culture, American culture. So I always said that we are lucky to celebrate now, as we, you know, we take also the holidays and celebrations and, you know, these American traditions into our lives as well. So how do you guys celebrate it?
It's a good question. I think Thanksgiving was always really a big deal for us, in that, you know, it's an American tradition, and my mom wanted to figure out, you know, how do we do this? How do we do that? Let's make sure we still have all the things, and bringing family together. But I think it still resonates with the Hispanic community in general. So kind of making it our own, of course, putting a couple spins on it, doing a couple like Peruvian dishes here and there that you know, just become part of the Thanksgiving meal. People look forward to it. So we took, you know, the premise of, and I think a lot of people in the Hispanic community who live in America will do that too, that they'll take it and make it their own, but adopting the traditions and merging the things together. So I talk about me merging personalities. Like that came from somewhere. I didn't just come up with it. But like that would always happen. So Thanksgiving being, although it's an American holiday, you know, really thinking about how we make it our own, but still at the core of it, it's celebrating and bringing people together and to the table, you know, to have family around. We would do that more often than just once a year, but, you know, so that tradition, you know, was still something that we celebrated, but still keeping true to things like Noche Buena for Christmas. Like it was never as much of like Christmas Day, but usually the night before, of course, but still staying true to some of those things too. So the other holidays, I mean, they're days off too, so we'll make the best of it. But just really making it our own and putting that Peruvian twist to it. And always about food, so always.
And one, you know, now that you mentioned Thanksgiving, what are the things that you feel more grateful for about, you know, living in this country?
Oh, I said it before, but seeing others in the Hispanic community that are immigrating here and family members, all of my family members who have also had to, struggle to become citizens. That was not an easy process. That was one that I did help my mom through. I will say that. I will say that because I was learning all of these things as she was also
like
studying.
All the questions, 100 questions that you have to
100 plus questions. So she was studying and preparing for that test while I was learning a lot of those topics in school. So
like American history.
Exactly. So we got to sit down and study together. So that was an interesting kind of experience. But so I think for me, I never saw that as something that was just given to me. Like I didn't take that for granted, I guess is the right way to say it. Because I saw how much she struggled to be able to pass that. I saw the other family members who did the same thing, and it wasn't something that was just handed to them. And so I never took that for granted that, yes, I was born here, but that's not something that everyone is granted. Everyone doesn't have that opportunity. So taking that into account, but it's just the opportunities. It really is. Being able to be the first one to go to college in my family, like that was always a big deal for me. Being able to be successful in my career and whatever that looks like was always important to me, and that was always to give back to the sacrifices that my family had to make for me. So it was never anything that I took for granted. I'm always very grateful in that sense to say, wow, like, yes, I have this opportunity. I have to make the best of it.
It's really nice, when sometimes we don't look back enough, and and when I see that 15-year-old that got here, right, and I see myself now, I'm like, I just want to be able to tell that 15-year-old, everything is going to be okay. There are amazing things coming for you. And that's why Hablamos Spanglish exists, is so we can also inspire at an early stage, those Hispanics that are maybe just getting here, or maybe they feel stuck, or they need some, kind of push, and also the Americans to learn our stories, our different backgrounds, different situations. And, now you were mentioning about your professional career, and I have seen, and I told you, like, I have seen you grow into different positions United Way, and I want for you to share, what United Way is, and also, that professional journey that you have had, and I feel very proud of you because the work that you do is incredible, and we need more Rosanas out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's really where I live on the day-to-day basis. So this is the easy part, right? But starting with United Way, I think the opportunity that I had was originally just to get in the door, and I wanted to kickstart my career somewhere. And so I started as an administrative assistant in 2019, and I had no idea what United Way did, but I learned along the way, trial by fire, and just started to slowly but surely understand the mission, which is really focusing on health, education, basic needs, and financial stability. But in the mission statement, what resonated with me was every person in every community. And so I took that and said, okay, how can I be a part of that? And how can I tie that into the Hispanic community and make sure that I'm being the best steward and representative of that? So that was something I always read and I learned, but I didn't know how I fit within that. So it took me 3 years to really figure that out. And so I started there, and then I had some time with marketing and communications department, which was great. And so I learned a lot more about communications and a lot of those techniques. It's not something that I did. Psychology, didn't really talk about marketing. So
you get to learn about, people and how people think a little bit.
a little bit, yes. But it was a great experience to understand how people receive information and being able to play a little bit onto the things that I learned in school too. So that was an interesting time period and a whole area outside of my comfort zone. So went from there back and started with the resource development team and started doing more engagement with donors and volunteers. So started to see how can I share that mission statement with the community a little bit more. Okay. So a little bit of taking the things that I've learned now along the way, had some administrative time period to learn the mission, understand the programs, understand everything that we do and why it's important, and then marketing of how people receive that information. And then I got to put it all together. So that was like very, very interesting and an awesome opportunity for me. So now I get to work with our impact groups. So Women United being one of those. And that's just a way to, again, engage and be a part of the community, but also bring people to the table as well. Emerging leaders, another one of those. So we focus more on up-and-coming professionals. So how do we engage that community? Not just young professionals, but staying inclusive to the fact that people will leave the workforce for a certain amount of time. You know, parents, for example. They could come back and still be an emerging leader. At any point in your career, you could switch careers, whatever the case may be. So I think for me, it was important to bring a lot of inclusivity to that too. So we made a lot of changes. And really that was just my vehicle to say, this is where I want to plug in. This is what I want to do. So I took both of those things and just started running with them and found some amazing people like you who've been able to be ambassadors really out in the community and bring the right people who are ready to be leaders in this area. So we had, you know, a lot of volunteers come forward and help with that, which I think has helped us to diversify that entire membership base that we never would have had before. And again, going back to how we support the mission, it's by telling people what we do. But then they can do so with other people who think the same way. It just completely blew it out of the water.
I know. It's, you know, it was mind-blowing when I learned about United Way and all the incredible things, because there are so many things you guys do, and it's beautiful to see how so many people come together, the staff, the volunteers, donors, you know, supporters that come together to help the community, which, you know, I know, for example, that there is a huge Hispanic community in need. And I want, you know, to talk a little bit about that so we can, you know, see what else also we can do as a community, how also we can help. Because I think for the Hispanic community, sometimes we think is that the Hispanic community needs help, but also there is a huge Hispanic community that can give back and contribute and can help.
Yes. I have nothing to add. No, yes, that's 100% true. And I think that that's true for all minority populations, right? And focusing on the Hispanic community, there's so much opportunity. But when you think about it, and somebody asked me this question was, how many CEOs do you know in our community that are Hispanic? 1, 2, 3, you know, a handful, less than 10. So it was something that I thought about, and like, there's so much opportunity to uplift these professional women and professional Latinos in the community to be at that point. But they're already in a position to start giving back. So we need to engage those people. And that was really the reason why bringing the right diverse leaders into those groups so that they can bring their diverse leader friends to the group. And we can expand that even further and show that there's a capacity to support so that they can give back to those that will hopefully eventually be empowered to be in that position as well. So it's a full circle. And, you know, it's paying it forward too. So if you had the opportunities to, you know, be able to be a leader, now how can you then pay it forward or pay it back to the next era or the next generation? So that was a big piece for me, was to bring the right people to the table so that they can share the message and show that we can give back. And that's something that I want to continue to do.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, you know, seeing the stats, I know, you know, Hispanics, we love to help. Like, we love to help, get involved.
Always.
But we tend to help, we need to help our families in our countries, or we support an organization in our countries, that is something that is relatable to us. And, when I was thinking about having you here, I was thinking about also how and educate our community, not only here in Orlando, but everybody that is listening to us around the country, that there are ways to get involved, because we have a huge Hispanic community that needs our help.
Right.
And also, that we might come from Venezuela or Colombia, Peru, Cuba, whatever, anywhere, right? So, and they need our help, right?
Yeah.
So they are ways that we can make an impact, and it doesn't have to be even monetary. It's just by giving our time.
I can give you a really good example of that. Hurricane Maria in 2018, I believe it was before I started with United Way. So it's not a personal experience. Luckily, we haven't had to go through that since, but we had a huge influx of the Puerto Rican population coming into Orlando at that time period. And we had folks that really resonated with that from the Hispanic community that would give anything that they had, right? And so I think you bring up a really good point, is that there's such a passion for giving, whether it's to a neighbor or making food for, whatever that is. And that's engraved in, I think, the culture, and that's how I grew up as well. So thinking about how we play on that, how we activate that. So in Hurricane Maria, those folks that would give anything that they had, whether that was donating household items, hygiene kits, whatever they had, they were giving. And that was because they were in a position to do so. But if they didn't know where to give that or how to channel that's why we have to do a better job of being, intentional about sharing. This is a place where you can give, and it doesn't just have to be monetary. It can be through the items that whatever it is, the volunteering and the time. There were so many folks that were volunteering at the airport to bring in those refugees when they were coming in after the hurricane. And that was just time. So there's so many different ways that the Hispanic community knows that they want to give, but how do they do that? So we just have to channel that energy and make sure we continue to do that too. Like you said, not just in Central Florida, but everywhere.
Definitely. And you mentioned something about, that outreach, so that education, how do I learn, about the different organizations that are here that I can support. And I remember last year attending to an event that the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in Orlando put together for the Hispanic business community to learn about the different nonprofit organizations that are here that making an impact. And it was wonderful to see that, because, we need that educational part, right? Sometimes, you don't know what you don't know. And I see that the Harold Florida United Way is doing a great job by doing that outreach. And, that takes me back to why I started my company and why we do Hispanic marketing, is because, I had that firsthand experience where, I was at Univision interviewing Hispanic women that had breast cancer. We were doing a campaign for the American Cancer Society, and these Hispanic women didn't know about what the organization provided, right? So there was a lack of outreach. So these women were saying, I wish I knew, about this organization and everything that they provide. So I think you guys are doing an incredible job by bridging that gap. I
hope so. I'm going to continue to bridge that gap. And we've been really igniting a lot of areas around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's inclusive, of course, of the Hispanic population, but partnering with the right organizations to get the word out to the right people is what we need to continue to look to do. And I think the Hispanic Chamber is the right place to start. I heard someone say one time, if you're moving into a new area, get involved with your local chambers
Yeah.
and your local United Way. And everything else will fall into place. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think that partnership that we have with the Hispanic Chamber is really how we can continue to spread the word with the small business community, the business community in general, but then also reaching clients. How do we get to the folks that are in need, and how do we share a little bit more of that message? Definitely. So continuing to do that, and through 211 as well, through our crisis line, is the number one thing. If anyone takes anything away from what they learned about United Way, and we try to share that and spread that message through the chambers and through other organizations that we partner with too.
Yes. No, that's true. And so now I'm gonna be changing a little bit the topic.
Okay.
I'm gonna be saying some words, and I want you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. We want to continue to get to know Rossana as a person. So, food, when you think about food.
The first thing? That first item?
First thing.
The first food item?
Yes.
Oh, we're sticking on theme here, on the Peruvian theme. Lomo saltado.
Oh, lomo saltado,
That's it.
We were just talking about that the other day. Like, you guys, Peruvians have them best culinary. Oh my gosh.
In the world. I heard a couple of times. I heard it here and there. I might be biased, but I heard it.
And we have, I can be biased too.
Learning how to make things has been fun journey as well. So I've attempted a couple of times. My mom does a better job than me, but
oh my gosh, you have to tell us a little bit about that, because it's
oh my gosh,
that's just learning. For me, for example, like learning how to cook the traditional food for Thanksgiving. The same thing is like, okay, how do you cook a turkey or the sweet potatoes? So the same thing will.
Oh my gosh, just trial and error. Yeah. Just keep. I've just kept trying, and sometimes it's like similar to. And I always base it off of, how does my mom make this? But she is so quick. She makes things so easily. Okay. She makes it look like nothing. And she's just like chopping up, blending, and doing this at the same time, and boiling this over here, and the potatoes over there, and frying this, baking this. I'm like, how did you just do all of that in 30 minutes? I am slow. So I think a little bit more detailed. So I take my time. It takes me 2 hours to cook anything. I take forever.
But sometimes that depends also on the personality. My sister is an architect, and she takes some time, and everything has to be right. Pretty,
aesthetically
pleasing.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay. So it doesn't have to be famous, but if you think of a famous Hispanic or non-Hispanic person that inspires you?
Oh, let me think about that. Like just a famous from.
It doesn't have to be famous, but if there is someone that comes to mind, or somebody that has inspired you.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, outside of family, it's hard because with famous people, you never know what the next move is going to be sometimes. Yeah. I think, let me think about this.
We'll go back to it, okay?
I need to come back to that.
Okay,
There's too many good options.
A place you love to visit here in the U.S.?
California.
California?
Yes.
And you were there recently,
I love driving
right?
in California. Like renting a car and driving out in California is probably one of my favorite things. I one time went up all the way to the top of a mountain driving.
Nice.
It's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that.
Yes.
Or you take me.
That and Miami. Okay? I have to say Miami. Okay. I have to say Miami too.
Favorite sport?
Soccer, but only because just growing up, that's what we would watch.
Okay.
But probably soccer. A little bit of basketball, but probably soccer mostly. And city.
Okay.
Orlando City.
Of course, we have to mention it. Yes. Do you have, this one is a favorite American word or a Spanish word?
Ooh, one word.
My goodness.
Oh my goodness. These are good questions. And it's like, it doesn't come to mind. It's not coming to me. Oh my gosh. It's funny because, and I have to share this, is that I have a note that, and I could pull it up. My mom is teaching me like Peruvian slang.
Okay.
And as she's getting older, she's remembering all of these things. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So, oh my gosh, I have to pull it up.
But
I have a whole list.
Oh my gosh. But now that you mentioned that, I always said like, hey, just one word can mean a completely different thing, in Spanish.
Yeah.
In Peru, in Venezuela, in Colombia, in
I've seen so many videos of that too.
Like we can speak, we
like
speak
straw.
Spanish.
There's a whole debate
exactly.
on how you say straw.
Yeah.
How do you say straw?
We said pitillo. What you?
Straw.
Straw? Okay. You Spanglish.
Just a little bit of Spanglish in there. No, honestly, it's pitillo probably. But
pitillo, but there popote.
So many things.
Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
There's
so
a million.
many things.
I just saw a video on that. I think I can answer that question. Because I just thought of one while you were talking about that. My mom started saying que le dio la fiaca because she's tired and she does not going to do anything.
Le dio la fiaca.
Okay. Fiaca. I'm like, what is fiaca? She's like, just lazy.
Oh, okay.
Fiaca. I'm like, what? It does not sound like that's what it would mean. But I started using it now too. And like if I needed to do something, like I had a side project I was going to work on, I'm like,
that's funny. You know what? I might change the question to the favorite slang.
Slang? I'm telling you, I have a whole page of notes now.
That's cool. And then a favorite TV show?
Oh my gosh. Right now, it's a bad answer, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Love Island.
Oh, okay.
It's on Hulu, and it's terrible. It's just reality TV, but it's a new thing that like my friends and I are all watching at the same time, and an episode comes out every day. So it's a bonding experience.
There you go.
Because you get to talk all about it every day.
Now that you're talking about your friends, have you introduced your Hispanic roots?
Yeah, I mean they all are. That's really part of yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I have two friends, a couple of my best friends that are also family friends because they're Peruvian as well. So it's like an extension of my family at this point.
Okay.
And then anywhere from Colombia, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic. I mean, just a little bit of everywhere. But they have all been part of that, building my roots too. So because they're all Hispanic too. So
there you go.
That's great.
There you go. And so you have learned, because that's the other thing is that for me, for example, when I got here, there was like a huge wave of Venezuelans and also Colombians, Puerto Ricans, of course, here in Central Florida, right? So, but I learned so much about these cultures, right? And their food traditions or the way they speak. And it was funny when I went to Puerto Rico and I saw like the mayo ketchup, like the so I was like, oh my gosh, this is a real word. A real word. So it was funny because
it's a real word.
Yeah, exactly. So did you go through that like also while you were at school or working, you have that melting pot and getting to know other Hispanics, because that if you stay in your country or like you wouldn't get to meet that diverse.
And that's how I kind of grew those friends, that group that I have are all from childhood. So I met one of my best friends in 4th, 5th grade. And I mean, it just became part of her family, became part of my family. And like that, all of that grew from there. But being able to kind of add to that group, learn about different Hispanic cultures and how their family participates in things like we were talking about Thanksgiving. It's a good example. Yeah. Like they do it a little bit differently. But yeah, growing up, it's just, or even through moving here to Orlando is a little bit different. So I feel like in Broward, that Spanglish and all of that's a little bit more like culturally accepted, I guess. People are like, okay. And you'll see that I think a lot of, in retail and hospitality and all of that, they understand a little more Spanish. Okay. And because a lot of people that will come in speak only Spanish. And so they have to kind of figure it out, or they'll figure, they'll use context clues. But yeah, I think when I got here too, I found that was a little bit different in the Central Florida area. It's a little, we have a huge, like you said, Puerto Rican population, other Hispanic communities, but it's a lot less culturally, I think, accepted than it is down in South Florida. Not in a negative way, but just in an understanding kind of way. Like how many people speak Spanish, understand Spanish? How much can you communicate with each other? So that was an interesting thing when I got here. But definitely have been slowly but surely trying to integrate a couple more, like mayo ketchup. That's a real thing. We should be talking about that. That should be an English word at this point.
Exactly. So one of the questions that, we're asking all of our guests is, what would you like to see here in the U.S., right? Or what would you like to see Hispanics achieve here in the U.S.?
Oh, that's a good question. So you just have to use the word equality at some point, right? To say that it's not a matter of, Hispanics being the top of everything or the number one spoken, the Spanish is the number one spoken language, trying not to outdo, but just create equality. So I think for me, especially in this community, it's to uplift the Hispanic population to be at par integrated and welcomed and accepted, especially here, especially in this state, because it has such a large Hispanic population, but across the country, because they're all over the place. New York, New Jersey, California, Texas. I mean, you think about all of these places that have a huge demographic of Hispanics, just to get them to a point where there's no question that they belong here. They're part of the DNA of this community and this country, and just to get to a point where they're seen as part of the entire community is
recognized, right?
Just being again at level, and it's not about being better than anyone else. It's just about being accepted, and I think the Hispanic community is so accepting that is put out, and so that just needs to now be received. So that would be my goal.
And I love that because, one of the things that I think we're seeing it every day is that, things are changing, right? Yeah. And it's not only, recognizing Hispanics on Hispanic Heritage Month, which, is a great month to celebrate our heritage, our food traditions, music, and the impact that we're making here in the U.S., which is amazing. But every day, I think, we hear a different story, and we should be, recognized every day. But and thank you for mentioning that. And then we're getting close to the end of this episode. I would love to continue getting to know you and also the audience as well. And this might be the first episode we did do together, but as you're always welcome to Hablamos Spanglish.
Thank you.
So my last question is, who would you nominate to be part of this conversation of Hablamos Spanglish?
Oh my goodness. There's so many good options. I think really tying in with the Women United side of things, there's a couple of folks that serve on some of those committees that I would love to be a part of this conversation. Migdalia. Yes. I don't know, you probably already have her on there, but Migdalia Figueroa, I think she would be she's such a shining light, and she's taken on so much in her role with Telemundo that it's I don't know how she does it. I know. Let alone she was on a panel the other day. She's on the luncheon committee with you for Women United, and she's so committed. And she's even a force. It's insane to me. How has she taken on so much, and yet she can still be so committed to everything that she does? So I have to pass it down and nominate Migdalia.
Awesome. Yes, she is on the list.
I'm sure she is already.
But thank you so much, Rossana. I love learning more about you and your background, and thank you for everything you're doing for the community. Like I said before, we need more Rossanas, and I know many young women will be listening to this story, and that you are inspiring them through their story, through your story. And that's why I said that we need to have you back here to continue this
I would love to. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.